Blue Beast Tales by the PARAnnoyed P.I. Written in 2021. How was I to tell? My life started off pretty ordinary, but how was I to tell I would be thrust through unordinary perils? Tendons and synapses still linger with cocktails of senses. Here I will try to succinctly surmise how I flew over my 3 trips to the cuckoo's nest. It started, age 23, my first visit, which was the result of a panicked young psychologist who refused to let me leave his clinic when I showed signs of instability. I was thrown in for 2 weeks from a depressive episode resulting from a bad breakup. I saw all manner of human behavior inside, from "I'm the devil" table flipping to "you must be a doctor 'cause you always wearing vests," and "how many smokes can I fit in one smoko?" You see it all in the big house. This also happens to coincide with meeting my partner, who too was in the clinker for depressive symptoms. We've been together for nearly 10 years, supporting each other, ever since we shared the animal game, where you guessed the name from features. Age 28. The second visit to a psych ward was an even more intense shock to the system. One that was catalyzed by poor eating and sleep habits, resulting in a CAT-10, crisis assessment and treatment, being called for acute delusion and mania symptoms. I was kept in for a month. Refused injections at first, stopped eating for 11 days, refused to drink anything but scorching hot water. I thought doctors, psychologists and nurses all had extra field training in ESP, extrasensory perception. I imagined the Nazis and Japanese had internal hospital spies, trying to weed me out from Allied descendant lists circulated post-internet. I pulled Britney and shaved my blonde medium mop into a shallow Travis Bickle mohawk, and when I re-entered clinic Gen Pop I was seen as a neo-Nazi by some and copped a lead weight-dropping punch to the face for quoting Mitch Hedberg to an exercising muscle. The dog is forever in the push-up position. I cleaned up the butts. Every cigarette but I could find went into the bin, at the chagrin of other patients who might have used that precious rain and dirt-sodden resource for later. The courtyard had to be immaculate, the beds were wilted and wounded, it had to be fixed. Nothing could stop the wild delusions and more. The internet was conspiring against me, food was poison, I was being tested for an elite special program. Everything had significance, and you didn't have to eat or drink, you just needed a good story. This was the discovery of my paranoid schizophrenic diagnosis. A lifetime of feeling different led to a late-onset acute schizophrenic episode, which caused me to prevent my partner from eating Christmas leftovers. I was in a clean mental health facility, but also in a completely other world. I was kicked up the backside by a 60-year-old Vietnam vet, who couldn't know the real toll that PTSD from war can do to a 10-year-old combatant. I communed with an ancient Egyptian alien descendant, who could pinpoint the future and past from star map constellations on his smartphone. I spoke with an old friend through someone I'd never met, his gender swap lent no repercussions when reintroducing myself to her, though they were most hospitable to my charmed familiarity and supplied callback-in jokes that inevitably went overhead. I saw my favorite teacher doing knuckle push-ups without him having never actually visiting the clinic. The same pencil, auburn beard and glasses told me I'd be safe in his education once again. My uncle stole my vest out of my room and wore it proudly amongst the halls and lounge arena, while having never called in, his grim smirk was ever present. I entered all of my top relevant details to an old high school friend turned student psychologist, who now offered me questionnaires that were no doubt leading to AAA Hollywood XX flying me over to complete the second portion of pre-production Q&As. My kindergarten playmate was now fully grown up and acting as head nurse for my treatment, never mind she had aged 2 decades on me, I was in time-worn safe hands. How was I to tell what was real or some cruel game on the Truman Show? I stayed in an outpatient clinic for 2 weeks, but this would spell the continuation of my pervading spiral. My third stay in a psych ward was a post-2-month relapse from taking myself off the weight-gaining, sleep-altering antipsychotics. At this point, I was getting better while still exhibiting symptoms. I ended up in there for 3 weeks. Breaching the world for the first time, I bought new runners and got to know the oval nearby the clinic. I still wasn't taking my mental health routine seriously at this point yet. I would skip the clinic for a few nights without properly alerting authorities and walk home to find my partner and flatmates just taking it easy. I missed and craved this normalcy. However, I was not normal yet. I was working on a novel idea before this episode, and I was still meeting relatives of characters in the outpatient clinic. How was I to know that everything the universe decided to reveal to me wasn't elaborately and carefully orchestrated to enlist me in a top-secret artist retreat, where any music heard on the radio had to have come from someone who'd been through this very program? I was writing till 6 a.m. and meeting patients for morning smokes. This was my new normal in getting normal. You see all types of people in the madhouse. You confront yourself mostly. But when you're coming down off deathly delusions and insipid imaginings, then having an old woman mumble prayers at you, only to leave apples and chocolates in the general lounge room, as trinkets for you and only you, as some homage to her Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, which she's absolutely certain happens to be you at this point, it can get a bit overwhelming. It's the people and bonds that help you come back out of these places that you'll never forget, and forever struggle to find words for. It occurred to me walking the other day, the double meaning of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Could the author be referring to how in a mental health facility there houses a collective fire of grief and trauma whose sole outlet is a solitary chimney flue? Or could it be a sharper stab that the single flue to the whole building is a lone staff fire chimney? Maybe it's this embedded takeaway that causes people to think these wards are one-size-fits-all.